So good afternoon, students. In the previous submodule, we have discussed on black body radiation. The most important outcome of Planck's radiation formula was the bold hypothesis that energy is not continuous. Rather, it is discrete. In other words, energy is quantized, and the smallest possible change in energy is h nu, where h was called Planck's constant and nu is the frequency of that light, frequency of the electromagnetic wave. Planck's law was very successful, but still the scientific world was not ready to accept the concept of energy quantization. And believe me, even Max Planck himself did not believe it. The proposition of energy quantization was just an act of despair for him. He was desperate to find out the formula that could explain experimentally observed black body radiation spectrum. And out of that desperation, he proposed that concept. Therefore, no one at the time believed the energy quantization, not even Max Planck himself. No one except a nameless, fameless clerk working in a patent office. This man, in 1905, published 4 research papers that revolutionized the world of science and technology followed. Those 4 papers were on photoelectric effect, Brownian motion, special theory of relativity, and mass energy equivalence. The impact of those work was so great, the year 1905 was regarded as Annus Mirabilis, year of miracles. And hopefully you understand the person is no other than Albert Einstein. He not only believed the concept of energy quantization, but also used the concept in his photoelectric effect. If you remember the photoelectric effect, that only those photons of particular frequency or energy are able to liberate electrons from metal surface. That was the basic concept of photoelectric effect. Now, in the photoelectric effect, Einstein said that light has shown its particle nature, though we know that in maximum phenomena like reflection, refraction, interference, diffraction, polarization, dispersion, in all these phenomena, light shows its wave nature. We can understand those phenomena by the concept of the wave nature of light or any electromagnetic wave. On the other hand, in case of photoelectric effect, if you only consider the wave nature of light, you cannot understand the mechanism behind it. You need to consider that sometimes light behave as a particle also, and we call the smallest particle of light as photon. We call it as photon. Let me change the color. So we call it as photon, and we know from the Planck's hypothesis as well as from photoelectric effect that energy of photon is regarded as h nu, where nu is the frequency of that electromagnetic wave, frequency of light. So this is the first experiment where we observe the particle nature of light. Then the next one, where we could observe that light also shows its particle nature, is called Compton effect, from the name of the discoverer Arthur Compton. We call it as Compton effect. Before you understand Compton effect, let's revisit a fundamental concept of electromagnetism. Either you have heard it in your 10+2 standard or you will know it for the first time now. But this concept is very simple. The concept is that whenever any electromagnetic wave like light, like your visible light, having a frequency nu say, interacts with a matter, any type of matter, and we know matter is composed of atoms. So that means it's simple word, whenever light interacts with an atom, when light interacts with an atom, then the first thing that is observed is this atom starts vibrating. This atom starts vibrating. It starts vibrating. But we know the atom can, if it is a solid material, then the atom cannot change its position. So about its mean position, it just starts vibrating like this. It just starts vibrating. That means it must have a frequency nu. And it is observed the frequency of vibration of the atom, frequency of the vibration of this atom is same as the frequency of the incident wave. So again, whenever an electromagnetic wave interacts with an atom, then the atom starts vibrating with the same frequency as the incident wave. And electromagnetism says that whenever any charged particle vibrates, whenever a charged particle vibrates, it emits radiation. Therefore, this atom when vibrates, this also emits a radiation. And this radiation, frequency of this radiation, frequency of this electromagnetic wave is same as the frequency with which the atom is vibrating. And we know that atom is vibrating with the frequency nu. Therefore, the emitted wave has the frequency nu. That means, in short, in summary, whenever an electromagnetic wave of frequency nu interacts with an atom, then atom starts vibrating with the same frequency, and as a result, the atom emits an electromagnetic wave with the same frequency. So, in other words, the frequency of the emitted radiation, the frequency of the emitted electromagnetic wave, the frequency of the emitted light, if I say it is nu dash, that is same as frequency of the incident wave. Frequency of the emitted wave, frequency of this wave is same as frequency of the initial wave. That is verified experimentally, theoretically in electromagnetism. That means, in other words, since wavelength and frequency are inversely proportional to each other, the wavelength of the emitted wave is same as wavelength of the incident wave. Okay, that is the classical concept. Now, what Compton observed was slightly different. Instead of any type of electromagnetic wave, Compton used X-ray. Why X-ray? The X-ray has very small wavelength. The wavelength range of X-ray can be as low as 0.01 to 1 angstrom. You understand? It's so small, and that's why it has a high penetrating power, because of its small wavelength or high frequency. So Compton used a particular type of electromagnetic wave, X-ray. Gamma ray can be taken, but that will be harmful. That's why it is easier to take X-ray. And instead of any type of matter, used carbon, which is a light element, because carbon is light element. We know the atomic weight of carbon is 12. So when these two conditions are taken, that means X-ray is used for light element, then whenever this electromagnetic wave, same experiment is done, same process, that means the electromagnetic wave, say frequency nu, interacts with a carbon atom, then carbon atom starts vibrating with some frequency, and then it emits electromagnetic wave of frequency nu dash. Electromagnetism says, classical theory says, that these two frequencies must be same, as we have discussed in the previous slide. These two frequencies must be same. But for this particular experiment with the X-ray and carbon atom, Compton observed that the frequency of the emitted wave, is less than the frequency of the initial wave. That means, in other words, wavelength of the emitted wave now increases than the initial wave. So again, what is Compton effect? And this phenomenon is called Compton effect. So what is Compton effect? When a monochromatic means we are considering a single wavelength. Though theoretically we cannot say that we can have a single wavelength of frequency, but here when we talk about laser, we'll understand that monochromaticity means the variation of wavelength should be as small as possible. Okay. So for the sake of understanding now, we are considering a single wavelength. Though I'm telling you, single wavelength is not possible to consider. So whenever X-ray of a wavelength lambda and frequency say nu is interacted with a light element like carbon, then it is observed that the scattered electromagnetic wave has a lower frequency than the initial wave. That means scattered electromagnetic wave has a higher wavelength than the initial wave. This phenomena of getting larger wavelength or shorter frequency is called Compton effect. The name of the discoverer, Arthur Compton. And why frequency changes or wavelength changes, why frequency decreases or wavelength increases, there is no explanation from classical theory. That is Newtonian mechanics, electromagnetic theory, statistical mechanics, they cannot explain you. They cannot give you an idea why it is occurring. It can only be explained with that concept of energy quantization. That means we can explain it if and only if we consider that light is composed of particles and each particle has a energy h. If we consider it, then only we can explain it. Explain why frequency is changing or wavelength is changing. So now we will derive the change in frequency or wavelength. So open your physics copy, and from this point onward, you must write down whatever I will tell you to write. So first, what is occurring? An electromagnetic wave of some frequency, say nu, interacts with a stationary electron. This is an electron. This electron, the red colored one, is a stationary electron. That means it is kept at a position. It is at rest. So this is an stationary electron. Okay. Why I am considering electron? Because instead of atom, because whenever atom absorbs the energy, that means its electrons are absorbing the energy. So instead of the atom, first I am considering electron. You may say the electron may not be stationary, correct? But for simplicity, first I am considering electron is at rest. Electron is at rest. Electron is not moving. So under that condition, so what the assumption we are taking? We are considering an electromagnetic wave interacts with a stationary electron. After the interaction, the electromagnetic wave goes along this direction. Say this direction is theta, theta with that x-axis, and the electron moves in the direction phi. Okay. So this is the initial electromagnetic wave, initial X-ray. This is the stationary electron. The electron is at rest. Then after the interaction, the electromagnetic wave goes along this direction, say making an angle theta with the initial direction of approach. This is the initial direction of approach. This is the initial direction of approach. With that direction, it makes an angle theta. And the electron, after the scattering process, goes in a direction phi. So this is your scattered electron. First thing, we will write down the energy and momentum of photon and electron before and after scattering. First, energy of the electron. Energy of the photon. So we know that energy of photon means h into nu, if nu is the frequency. And the previous class, we have talked about momentum of a photon. Remember, we have discussed that though rest mass of a photon is zero, but it may possess or it possesses a momentum, and that momentum is E by C, that is h nu by c. So momentum of the photon is h nu by c. So these are the energy and momentum of the initial photon, the incident photon. Now the next point is energy of electron. The electron is at rest. So please, anyone tell me what should be the energy of that electron? Electron is at rest. From our discussion in the previous class, tell me what should be the energy of that electron? Anyone? Electron is at rest, so it doesn't have any kinetic energy. V is zero. H nu, no, H nu. Remember, H nu is the energy of a photon. Electron is not a photon. Electron is not wave. Electron is not an electromagnetic wave. Electron is a particle. What would be its energy when the particle is at rest?
The rest mass energy is
zero. Rest mass energy, right? Rest mass energy, m naught c square. M naught is the rest mass. Rest mass means whenever a particle is at rest, then its mass is called rest mass. And whenever a particle is at rest, then relativistic mechanics says that it still possesses some amount of energy, and that energy is called rest mass energy, m naught c square. So this is the rest mass energy of the photon, electron, m naught c square. Now, what will be the momentum? The electron is at rest, so momentum zero. As simple as that. Now, after the scattering process, we say that the frequency changes from nu to nu dash. Frequency changes from nu to nu dash. Okay, we'll observe that whether nu dash and nu are same or not. So for the sake of calculation, we are giving different name. So nu dash is the frequency of the light, frequency of the X-ray after the scattering. That means after this interaction, the frequency is nu dash. Therefore, energy of this scattered photon will be h nu dash. Same formula. Only frequency changes. Momentum will be h nu dash by c. So these are the energy and momentum after the scattering of that photon of this wave. What about the electron? Electron is now moving. You observe after the scattering process, electron is moving in a particular direction along with direction phi. So you cannot say its momentum is zero now. Therefore, it must possess some kinetic energy along with the response energy. So we can use the general formula of relativistic mechanics. That means E equal to root over p square c square plus m naught square sigma 4 like that. Or we just write E equal to mc square. Where m is not a rest mass. M takes care of the velocity also. Remember, we have written m equals to, in the previous class, m naught by root over 1 minus v square by c square. So this m is the mass of the electron when the electron is moving. So energy of the electron after the scattering process is mc square and its momentum is mv. If I say v is the velocity. So these are the energy and momentum of the electron and photon before and after scattering. So if I make a table, it will look like this. In case of photon, the energy before was h nu. After frequency changes to nu dash, therefore energy will be changed from h nu to h nu dash. And here the momentum h nu by c to h nu dash by c. That will be for photon. Whereas in case of electron, initially electron was at rest, so its energy means only response energy. And after the scattering, it has some kinetic energy, so that should be added to. Therefore, its total energy is just mc square. On the other hand, initially the electron was at rest, so momentum was zero. But after the scattering, it gains some velocity, so its momentum becomes mc. So first thing, draw this figure. Draw this figure in your copy. Without this figure, we cannot do the calculation. So just draw this figure with the value of energy and momentum at each cases. That means for electron and photon, write the value of energy and momentum before and after. Just draw this whole thing. Do it quickly. Unless you have it on your copy, you cannot do the calculation. Is it completed? No need to make the table because all the information of the table is already given here. we require the energy and momentum value of electron and photon before and after scattering, before and after the impact, before and after the interaction. That is what we require. And theta is the angle with the x-axis along which the scattered photon goes, whereas phi is the angle along which the electron after scattering goes. These two angles we require. So first thing here we will use the conservation of energy and conservation of momentum to derive this Compton shift, or first to check whether there is actually a change in frequency or wavelength. We will use the conservation of energy and conservation of momentum. Now you know the conservation laws. Conservation laws tells you that total energy before a collision, before an impact is same as total energy after that interaction. So here our total energy before means this energy plus this energy. This is the total energy before the interaction. What is the total energy after the interaction? This is the total energy after the interaction. So first thing, what we'll do, we'll just add the initial energy and add the final energy and then equate them. So check your figure. Check the figure you have drawn. So this is the total energy before the interaction and this is the total energy after the interaction. Yeah, no problem. Now the trick is we'll rewrite it in some defined form. We'll write it, you observe what in which quantity we are most interested in. We are interested in whether there is a change in frequency or not. That means we are interested in nu and nu dash. We are not bothered about electron. We are bothered about the photon. So what we'll do, we'll rewrite it in such a way that these two frequencies are the same side. So I have written it in this way. That mc square equal to m naught c square plus h nu minus h nu dash. So this is the first equation. Okay, do the calculation. Just we have written the conservation of energy and then on the left side we have written mc square and all the quantities on right side. Done. Next thing, conservation of momentum. Now the conservation of momentum. Now if I look at the figure, conservation of energy was easy because energy is a scalar quantity, but momentum is not a scalar quantity. Momentum is a vector quantity. It has magnitude as well as direction. It has magnitude as well as direction. Now you notice we assume the two direction, one along x, another along y. These are the two directions here. We consider these are the two directions, along x-axis and along y-axis. Now the electromagnetic wave was going along positive x direction. So what will be the component of momentum? What will be the component of momentum along x-axis? This is already going along x-axis. So this one will contribute. This is 0, so no problem. Now what about this? You observe the photon after the interaction going along this direction. So what will be the component of its momentum? What momentum? This is the momentum. What will be the component of momentum of the photon after interaction along this direction? That we require. Get my point? Let me draw here. This was the initial direction of approach. After the scattering, photon goes along a direction theta. Okay. Now what we require, what we are going to do, we have two directions, along x direction, along y direction. We will find out the momentum along x direction and along y direction, because we have observed that initial photon was along this direction, but scattered photon is along this direction. They are not in the same direction. They are not in the same direction. Initial photon and scattered photon are not in the same direction. But if the directions are not same, you cannot compare them. Therefore, what we are doing, we are resolving the vector momentum into two components along x-axis and along y-axis. Now, initial photon is going along x direction, so its momentum remains along x direction. Initial momentum of the electron is 0 because electron was at rest, so no problem. The problem comes with the scattered photon. So this is going along this direction. We require the momentum of this photon along x direction. What was the momentum along this direction? H nu dash by c. This is the direction along theta. I require the momentum along x direction. So what will be the momentum along x direction?
Sir, h nu dash by c cos theta.
Exactly. Always remember that if you want the side with which angle is made, I want this side, this portion I require, then it is always cos, and the side with which angle is not connected, this side, is always sine. So here it will be h nu dash by c cos theta. Similarly, electron is going along this direction, this is phi. And what was the momentum of electron? mv. So what will be the component of electron along x-axis? mv cos phi now. Okay, we'll come to that later. So this. So according to conservation of momentum along x-axis, h nu by c, because initial photon was going along x direction, so whole component is along x direction, so no problem. Momentum of electron 0. Then momentum of scattered photon was h nu dash by c, but it was along theta direction, so the component along x direction will be used cos theta part. Similarly, for electron which is going along phi direction, the component along x direction will be mv cos phi. We will write it in a particular way. We will write it in this way. Why? You will understand why. I am writing it mv cos phi equals to whatever quantities remain. I am writing mv cos phi at one side and all the other quantities on the other side. Why? I will explain. Similarly, we will write down the conservation of momentum along y-axis. Now, initial photon was going along x direction, then there must not be any component of initial photon along y direction. So initial photon have 0 component along y direction. Electron is already at rest initially, so 0. Next is scattered photon. We know the scattered photon has momentum h nu dash by c, but it is along theta direction. So the component along y direction will be sine part. So since this is the direction, this is the cos part, this is the cos part, this is the sine part that is required for us. So this is h nu dash by c sine theta. Whereas the electron is going along this direction. This was your phi. So the component along x direction was mv cos phi. But what about the component along y direction? Whenever you are measuring y direction, the component along y direction, you are actually measuring negative y direction. This is the negative y direction. That means, but I require positive y direction, so the component will be minus mv sin phi. Be careful about the sign here, because the electron is going downward, and that's why its component is actually negative. Again, we will rewrite it such that mv sin phi will be on one side and other on the other side, like this. Why? Now, we have two conservations. One, the energy conservation, and we have the formula of energy conservation like this. We have the formula for momentum conservation. These are the momentum conservation. The two components we have along x-axis and along y-axis. Okay, if you cannot follow at any point, stop me. I'll repeat it. If you cannot write these things, ask me. I'll pause. But you need to write each and every point. Now, the point why I'm writing it in this way, because you have that here there are so many variables, there are so many quantities, and it is very difficult to handle with all these quantities. We are particularly interested in some of the quantities. Which quantities we are interested in? We are interested in the quantities which are associated with photon, because we want to check whether the frequency of photon changes or not. That means whether nu dash and nu are same or not. Whether nu and nu dash are same or they are different. In that we are interested in. If they are different, then what is the change? What is the shift that we want to estimate? What is that shift? Therefore, we are interested basically on mu dash and theta. Why theta? Because theta is the direction along which photon moves after the interaction. So we are interested in mu dash and theta. We are not at all interested in which direction the electron is going. That means we are not interested in the direction phi. We are not interested in the momentum of electron. We are not interested in those things. Therefore, we have written it in this way. Now, if we can write the momentum of photon and electron, that means momentum conservations in this way, then from 3A and 3B, what you can do, you just take the square and add them. Take square of 3A, take square of 3B and add these two. Do it by yourself. I hope you have written up to equation 3D. Okay, by the way, when we get conservation of energy, that means we get this formula, then from this formula, you just square it. You just take the square of equation 1. Why? I will explain it again. But just follow my instruction right now. From the energy conservation, you got this formula, this equation you got, equation 1. Now just take the square. So left hand side m square 6/4, no problem. Right side square of this whole thing. So a plus b whole square formula, you use it. So a square plus b square plus 2ab. Just write these 4 equations, 1, 2, 3, and 3. Okay. Done. Now, just take square of 3a, take square of 3b, add them, and tell me the result. Take square of 3a and square of 3b, add them. That means this will be m square v square cos square phi equals to this, and it will be m square v square sin square phi equal to something. And add them.
M square V square equals to H square by C square bracket V square plus V dash square minus 2V V dash cos theta.
Right, very good. This is the value. If we just square and add them, this will get. So first thing you notice, we have get rid of phi. In this equation, there is no phi. And that's why we have written equation 3 and 3b in that way. We have written equation 3 and 3b in that way because we want to get rid of phi. So now in your equation, phi is not there. So this is your equation after squaring and adding them. So basically, from conservation of momentum, we actually get this formula. From conservation of momentum, we get this formula. Not formula, better to say in an equation. We will not remember it. Okay. Now you observe all the quantities are in a squared form. M square, V square, H square, nu square, all are in squared form. Because to get rid of phi, we have to square the equation and then add it. And now since we need to utilize the conservation of energy also. And if you observe your first equation, it is already written to your copy. Check your first equation. You observe the first equation, nu and nu dash are there, not nu square or nu dash square. It is not nu square or nu dash square. It is nu and nu dash. So it is in single power. Whereas from the conservation of momentum, whatever equation we get is in squared form. That's why we have squared the equation 1 also. That's why we have taken the square of equation 1 so that it will be also in the square format. Then we can add, subtract these things. Okay. So if you have written up to this, if you have done up to this, we get this equation from conservation of momentum. Again, you can write it in this form. You can start from this one also, but I don't want numerator and denominator. That's why I'm written it in this one. M square, V square, C square, all the quantities on that. So that there will be only this form. There is no numerator or denominator. So this is our equation 4. So this equation 4 we get from conservation of momentum along x-axis and along y-axis. And you have equation 2. Equation 2 you have from conservation of energy. Now utilize these two. subtract equation 4 from 2. Subtract equation 4 from equation 2. That means from the conservation of energy squared formula, subtract equation 4. Great. So this is your equation 2 now. This is equation 2 and we have got equation 4. So equation 2 minus equation 4. So this minus this. So I am taking m square c to the 4 as common. M square c to the 4 as common. So 1 minus b square by c square. That will be on left side. Next, m naught square c to the 4. M naught square c to the 4. This whole quantity twice m naught c square h nu minus nu dash. This whole thing. Now you observe h square nu minus nu dash square. H square nu minus nu dash square. That means it is basically h square nu square plus nu dash square minus twice nu dash. Now you are subtracting this part from this. So h square nu dash, h square nu square cancel out, h square nu dash square cancel out. What is left? This portion is left. That means h square twice nu dash square nu dash. This portion remains. Next, h square twice nu dash cos theta. This portion remains. So this will be our value after the subtraction. Now the left side can be simplified also. We know m equals to m naught root over 1 minus b square by c square. This is known. Therefore m square will be m naught square by 1 minus b square by c square. That means m square into, just multiply these two, m square into 1 minus b square by c square. M square into 1 minus b square by c square will be m naught square. So from this portion I am writing m naught square only. So it becomes m naught square c to the 4 remains. And right hand side as usual. Only the thing that I have taken 2h square nu dash as common. Therefore it is 1 minus cos theta. M naught square c to the 4 cancel out. So what is left? Only these two quantities. So this quantity is taken on left and this remains on right. 2 cancel out, 1h cancel out. So this equation can be written as nu minus nu dash by nu dash. You can just rewrite it in this way. Why? Because as I explained earlier, that we are interested to check whether there is any shift in frequency or not. If there is a shift, what is the value of the shift? That we are interested in. Therefore, we have written all the quantities related to frequency on left side and rest on right side. So nu minus nu dash on left by nu dash. So all the quantities of related with frequency on left, rest on right. This can be written as nu by nu dash. That means 1 by nu dash minus nu dash by nu dash. So 1 by nu, that equals to this. So what we observe, that we get a formula of a formula which relates the two frequencies. We know nu was the frequency of the photon initially and nu dash is the frequency of the photon after the interaction. Classical mechanics says that these two must be same. Experimentally, it is observed in Compton effect that they are not same. Now, theoretically, we have observed that 1 by nu dash minus 1 by nu is not equal to 0 or any other quantity. Other very small quantity or very large quantity. It has a particular value. The nu 1 by nu dash minus 1 by nu has a particular value, and that particular value is h by m naught c square 1 minus cos theta. Please make sure that you require this one for numericals. But it is very hard to interpret because nu or nu dash is not written directly. Rather 1 by nu dash or 1 by nu is written. So what we'll do, we'll convert it into wavelength formula. So this is our shift formula in terms of frequency. But we know that frequency and wavelength are related with each other, and we know lambda wavelength is c by frequency. Wavelength equals to c by frequency. Therefore, if we say lambda is the wavelength associated with frequency nu and lambda dash is the wavelength associated with frequency nu dash, then just replace them. So instead of 1 by nu dash, what we can write? Lambda dash by c. From this, what is nu? Nu equals to lambda by c. Sorry, just the opposite. Nu equals to c by lambda. Therefore, 1 by nu means lambda by c. Therefore, 1 by nu dash can be written as lambda dash by c minus lambda by c. This c cancel out. Therefore, we have lambda dash minus lambda is h by m naught c 1 minus cos theta. Get my point? This is nothing but lambda dash by c minus, just a second. This can be written as lambda dash by c minus lambda by c equals to h by m naught c square 1 minus cos theta, or lambda dash minus lambda h by this c cancel, so m naught c 1 minus cos theta. So what is this lambda dash minus lambda? That is the wavelength shift we are interested in. That's why I have written this as delta lambda. This change in wavelength is not zero. Though h is very small quantity, we know the order of h is 10 to the minus 34 joule second. But still it is not zero because of the presence of m naught here also. M naught, if it is electron, then m naught has the dimension of 10 to the minus 31 also. Therefore, my point is delta lambda, that is wavelength shift, is not zero. And this is your formula for Compton shift. So if you are asked, and it is a very high possibility, there is a high possibility that you will get this type of question, the derive Compton shift. So that is your derivation. So you need to derive the formula for this Compton shift. That is how much change in wavelength occurs. Now you observe delta lambda is positive quantity. This lambda dash minus lambda is a positive quantity. That's why we can say lambda dash is greater than lambda. That means wavelength increases after the interaction, or frequency decreases after the interaction. Or we can simplify it as delta lambda equals to this whole quantity h by m naught c is written as lambda c 1 minus cos theta. What is lambda c again? Lambda c is h by m naught c. H, we know the value of h, 6.626 into 10 to the power minus 34 joule second, Planck's constant. M naught, what is m naught? Rest mass. Rest mass of what? We have considered electron here. So rest mass of electron 9.1 10 to the power minus 31 kg. Velocity of light in free space, you know, 3 into 10 to the power 8. If you plug in these values, if you put these values in this formula, you will get lambda c as 0.02427 angstrom. My suggestion, you must remember this. If you remember this value of lambda c, your numerical calculation will be much easier. Otherwise, at the time of exam, you have to put the values of h, m naught, c, etc. and get the result, and there is a high possibility of getting the wrong answer. So my suggestion, remember lambda c value for electron. For electron, the value is 0.02427 angstrom. Angstrom means 10 to the power minus 10 meter. So you observe the value is very small. Lambda c value is very small. Why angstrom? And we can check the dimension to get whether the unit is in the unit of meter, or we'll just check the left side. What is on left side? Wavelength. And we know that unit of wavelength is in meter unit or angstrom unit. That's why the unit on right hand side must also be the same. If the unit on left side is meter, then unit on right hand side must also be meter. But 1 minus cos theta is dimensionless quantity. 1 minus cos theta is dimensionless quantity. Therefore, h by m naught c, what we call as lambda c, must have the dimension of wavelength. And that's why this quantity lambda c is called Compton wavelength. This lambda c is called Compton wavelength. Compton wavelength, but Compton wavelength is a property of any particle. Like you know that mass of electron, mass of proton, mass of neutron, etc. Similarly, Compton wavelength is also a quantity of a particle. That means Compton wavelength of electron, Compton wavelength of proton, Compton wavelength of carbon atom, and so on. So this value, remember, this is the Compton wavelength of electron, because we have considered mass of electron here. When we find this value, we have considered m naught as 9.1 into 10 to the minus 31 kg, which is mass of electron. So, what we have observed that the Compton shift in terms of frequency is given by this formula. You need to remember it, whereas in case of wavelength, the formula is slightly changed with this. And the quantity h by m naught c, h by m naught c is constant for a particular type of particle. That means for electron, it is constant. For proton, it will be different value, but that is constant for proton, and so on. So we call that quantity h by m naught c as Compton wavelength, because it has the dimension of wavelength, and it is a characteristic of any particle. And we need to remember the value of Compton wavelength for electron, because for maximum numerical problems, electron will be associated. So it is wiser if you remember the value of h by m naught c, that is Compton wavelength for electron. This is for electron only. Only for electron, this is the value 0.02427 extra. Next thing, what we observe that this Compton shift delta lambda, this is constant for a particular type of particle. That means for electron, lambda c is constant. We have observed the value. Therefore, this shift, the Compton shift, depends on the angle theta. For different values of theta, you get different Compton shift. And what was theta? If you remember, this is the direction along which the photon was moving. After the scattering, after the interaction, photon goes along theta direction. Theta can be any value. Theta can be any value. For our derivation, we have considered theta. Theta can be 0 to 180 degree. 180 degree means this is the initial direction of approach of the photon. After the interaction, the photon goes backward in this direction, opposite direction. This is the initial direction. This is the final direction. So theta can be from 0 to 180 degree. Theta can be 0 to 180 degree. And for different values of theta, we get different value of Compton shift. When theta is 0, that means this is the initial direction of approach. After the interaction, photon goes along the same direction. Then you observe there is no change in frequency or wavelength. That means delta lambda is 0, because cos theta will be 1 then. So there is no Compton shift. Therefore, one point you have noticed that you may not get Compton shift. When you are not getting the Compton shift, you observe that when the photon doesn't change from its path. Whatever is the initial direction of approach of the photon, after the interaction, it goes along the same direction. Then there is no Compton shift. If theta is 90 degree, then cos theta is 0. So delta lambda is lambda c. That means then Compton shift is equal to Compton wavelength. Suppose in MCQ you are asked, what is the wavelength? What is the angle in which the Compton shift is same as Compton wavelength? So observe that is for 90 degree. Now if you are asked, what will be the maximum value of Compton shift? What is the maximum value of Compton shift? That means delta lambda max. What is the maximum value of Compton shift that can be observed? And at what angle will you observe it? When we get theta equals to 180 degree, then cos 180 degree means -1. Therefore, delta lambda will be twice of lambda c. That is the maximum possible value of Compton shift. So this is your maximum value, twice delta lambda c. That means for electron it will be 0.048 angstrom. That is the maximum Compton shift. That is the maximum Compton shift. Now, so this is our derivation. Now, if you have any query, please ask me. Otherwise, we'll just revise it and complete our session here. If you have any query, anyone, please tell me.
Why can't the theta be negative?
Why theta cannot be negative? Okay, what was the just observe the direction of theta. We have drawn it already. Check the direction of theta. Check the direction of theta. You are measuring it from this angle. This is the initial approach. So you are measuring it from this angle. This is the how are you measuring the theta from this point. So when initial value and final value coincide, that will be theta will be 0. Then theta is increasing, becomes 90 degree here. Then 180 degree. Now from 180 degree to 360 degree, what will be the change? Same as this one. That means suppose this is the initial direction. After that, you are saying this is theta. I hope that's how you are mentioning about negative. So it's
Yes,
not,
sir.
it is in the fourth coordinate or third coordinate you want to say. Yes, it can be. But does it change the value of delta lambda? Because whatever value you will get for this region, the same value you will get here. My point is cos 90 degree and cos 270 degree. Will you get some different value? Cos 0, cos 370, 360, will you get different value? So it will be same as that. That's why I'm saying the change here when I'm saying that theta changes from 0 to 180 degree. I'm saying that for this angle, for this range of angle, delta lambda will change. But from 180 degree to 360 degree, same as this one. You will not get any other value of delta lambda. No, physically possible. But if I try to measure it, it will be same. Physically, of course, possible. Third or fourth coordinate, it can go. In fact, after the collision, say this is the direction along electron moves, this is the direction along photon goes. Possible, no problem. But the maximum change, again, you will get delta lambda as 0 to twice lambda c. Anything else?
So when the Compton shift is minimum?
Compton shift is minimum when lambda is 0. Then when we do not get any Compton shift?
Yes, sir. There is no Compton shift. So
no Compton shift,
okay.
right? It cannot be negative. It cannot be negative. We'll discuss it physically also. Today we have discussed only analytical calculation. We'll understand it physically. That why Compton shift cannot be negative. That means here we are getting lambda dash greater than lambda. That's why minimum value of shift when lambda dash equals to lambda, that is delta lambda is 0. But why not negative? We'll discuss it. Anything? Don't you think that why before Compton no one could find this shift experimentally? No one could find that if there is an wavelength shift, there is a frequency change. No one could observe it unless Compton observed it. Why is it so? We know the theory now. Now use your logic. Why people could not find the Compton shift before Compton? What was so special about Compton that he only could observe it?
Because it's based on quantization of charge.
Not charge. Quantization of
Sir.
energy. Energy quantization.
Quantization of energy. Oh.
But okay, that's true. But why? You have the formula now. You have the formula. Just observe the formula. From that, this is your Compton shift. Delta lambda equals to lambda c 1 minus cos theta. Why lambda c is this? From that, you can think why people could not find it. This shift, people could not find this shift. What people observed? Delta lambda equal to 0. That was the classical mechanics statement. That before and after interaction, there is no change in wavelength of frequency. But here we are observing there is some change. Speciality is
because the concept of rest mass is not at that
Of course,
time.
of course, that's how we derive it. But my point is after derivation. After derivation,
Oh,
suppose I do not derive it. I have not derived it. I have given the formula only. From looking at the formula, I can predict. I can say why people before Compton could not observe this shift.
Okay, so the value is
Because
very
the
less.
target electron was
Nah,
bound to the carbon atom.
Huh? Then what? What? You are on the right
So
track.
if the target electron was the other people used the target electrons by binding it to the carbon atom,
Hmm. So
and the
what?
mass of the atom was huge.
Right. That is one reason. I'm giving you now the reasons. Very good. Observe it. Delta lambda equals to lambda c 1 minus cos theta. So what will be the maximum value of delta lambda? We observe maximum value of delta lambda is of the order of twice lambda c. Right? Maximum value of contour shift can be observed. You cannot get any value greater than that. That means almost 0.048 angstrom. Okay, because lambda c is 0.02427 angstrom. Roughly, I'm saying. So I'm saying twice of lambda c, almost 0.02048 angstrom. That is the maximum shift that can be observed, right? Now suppose you are considering X-ray. And what is the wavelength of X-ray? I have said you 0.1 to 1 angstrom. That means your lambda is a 0.1 angstrom. Clear? Your lambda is 0.1 angstrom. Then tell me what will be your lambda dash? Maximum lambda dash? 0.1 plus this 0.148 angstrom. Get my point? Delta lambda is this. What is delta lambda? Lambda dash minus lambda. So what will be lambda dash? Lambda plus delta lambda. That means maximum wavelength would be 0.0148 angstrom. If you assume that initial wavelength is 0.1 angstrom. Now with respect to 0.1 angstrom, 0.148 angstrom can be measured by any instrument. If you have any instrument, you can measure 0.1 angstrom, and with the same instrument, you can measure also 0.15 angstrom. 0.15 angstrom also can be measured. Like suppose you have a voltmeter. If the voltmeter has the range from 0 to 1 volt, you can measure 0.1 volt, you can measure 0.8 volt also with the same instrument. If your instrument can measure 0 to 10 volt, then 1 volt can be measured, even 1.7 volt can be measured, no problem. But suppose you are using visible light in the Compton shift. In case of Compton experiment, you are using visible light. Wavelength of visible, say 5000 angstrom. So lambda is 5000 angstrom. Maximum shift we know for electron will be same 0.048 angstrom. So what will be lambda dash? Lambda dash will be 5000.048 angstrom. Now you cannot have any instrument which can measure 5000, again 5000.048 angstrom or point. So theoretically, there is always the Compton shift. Whenever you are using any type of electromagnetic wave with any type of material, theoretically there is a Compton shift. Keep it in mind. In many books, it is written that there is no Compton shift for this cases, for that cases. No. Theoretically, there is Compton shift because whenever we have derived this formula up to this, whenever we derived it up to this, then we have not considered whether carbon atom is used, whether electron is used. We have considered m naught. M naught is the restlessness of the particle. It can be electron, it can be proton, it can be any atom, anything is possible. Therefore, for any type of wave, any type of photon, any type of material, Compton shift occurs. Remember, there is always delta lambda. There is always delta lambda. Delta lambda can be 0 only when theta is 0. Only when theta is 0, delta lambda is 0. Otherwise, there is Compton shift. Keep it in your mind very, very carefully. There is always Compton shift. Then why people could not observe it always? There is two reasons. There are two reasons for that. Why people, except Compton, could not observe it before Compton shift was detected. The reason, number one, Compton used X-ray. Why X-ray? Because if you use X-ray, then the wavelength is very small. Like if we consider wavelength of X-ray is 0.1 angstrom, Compton shift occurs for electron, and we know maximum shift that can occur is 0.048 angstrom when theta is 180 degree. Maximum shift. So if we consider maximum shift, then for that maximum shift, maximum wavelength that can be observed is lambda plus delta lambda. That means 0.1 plus 0.048, that is 0.148 angstrom. Now you observe with respect to 0.1, 0.148, that is 0.15, is not very different. That means with the same instrument, we can measure 0.1 or 0.15 angstrom. Both can be measured with the same instrument. And if we can measure two different values, that means we can observe Compton shift. We are getting two different values for lambda and lambda dash with the instrument. That means we are observing Compton shift. On the other hand, instead of X-ray, if you use some visible light, say we are considering red region, 6000 angstroms. Wavelength is 6000 angstrom. That photon is considered. If we consider again electron, then maximum Compton shift 0.048. Now you observe with respect to 6000 angstrom, 0.048 is very small quantity. With respect to 6000, 0.05 is very small. Therefore, the instrument which can measure 6000 angstrom cannot detect 6000.05 angstrom. The instrument that can detect 6000 angstrom, that means its range will be say 1000 to 10,000 angstrom. It can measure 1000, it can measure 1000 to 10, 1020, etc. Suppose the accuracy is 20 angstrom. In fact, if accuracy is 1 angstrom also, then also with the instrument whose accuracy is 1 angstrom, you cannot detect 0.05 angstrom because that is smaller than that. It is like you are using a normal millimeter scale. You are using a normal millimeter scale whose smallest division is 0.1 centimeter or 1 millimeter, and with the help of that you want to measure 0.005 centimeter. Can you measure it? No. Therefore, you are not detecting anything. You are not detecting any change. You are not detecting any change in measurement. Same thing is occurring here. With respect to 6000 angstrom, since 6000.05 angstrom is not detected, people think that there is no Compton effect. So experimentally, people could not detect it. So that is the problem with the detection measurement. Detection, that means it's the inaccuracy of the instrument that is being used, not with the theory. That's why this is the one reason that Compton shift was not detected. So if you use any wavelength which is not comparable to 0.048, which is not comparable to 0.05 angstrom, you cannot measure it. As simple as that. You need some instrument which can measure this small change. If the instrument can measure this change, then Compton shift will be observed. And here, think I am taking the maximum value, and you cannot expect to get this maximum value always. This occurs at a particular angle only. So in other cases, it will be much smaller than 0.05 angstrom. So there is no possibility of detection. What is the other reason? Other reason is that here we are considering electron. Compton has taken carbon element. One of you has mentioned it also. Compton used carbon. Carbon is light element. That means electrons are not very bound. Electrons can be free. So in that case, electron can be used. Like in the derivation, we have used electron. But if the electron is bound to the atom, for heavy element, electrons are bound to the atom. That means you cannot make a single electron free. Like here, what we have considered that electromagnetic wave interacts with a single electron. But when you cannot have a single electron, the whole atom comes. The whole atom comes. And in that case, when the whole atom itself comes, then what about M naught? M naught will not be the mass of electron then. M will be the mass of the atom then. Let me show you. I have written it. So instead of a single electron, when the whole atom takes part, When the whole atom takes part, when the electron is not free, when the electron is bound to the atom, then whenever you want to get a single electron, all the electrons, all the protons, nucleus, etc. comes, that means the whole atom interacts. Then you cannot use m naught in that formula. The calculations will be same. The whole derivation will be same. Only the change is, instead of electron, now the whole atom takes part. So instead of m naught, then we should say total mass of the atom. And whenever the total mass comes, hopefully you understand lambda c is already 0.02427 angstrom. It's very small. Now mass of the atom is much greater than mass of the electron, almost 10 to the power 4 times greater. If I take the smallest value also, it is 10 to the power 4 times greater. That means you are dividing it with 10 to the power 4 again. That means you are dividing it now 10 to the power 4. How small it will be now? Already it is 10 to the power minus 2 angstrom. What is the order? This order is 10 to the power minus 2 angstrom. 2.427 into 10 to the minus 2 angstrom. If we divide it by 10 to the power 4, then it will be 10 to the power minus 6 angstrom. Angstrom is already 10 to the power minus 10 meter. Very difficult to measure. Very difficult to measure with the normal instrument. Now you are getting 10 to the minus 6 angstrom. It will be impossible to measure. Therefore, whenever the atom itself takes part, theoretically again, you will get some value of delta lambda. Though very small, now the value will be some into 10 to the power minus 6 angstrom. But still, it's not zero theoretically. But experimentally, can you have any instrument that can measure with that accuracy? No. You cannot measure it. If you cannot measure it, what will be your inference? You will say, I could not detect it. You say that you cannot detect the change. You cannot detect the change. Change means delta lambda. You cannot detect any change. That means you say there is no change in wavelength or there is no change in frequency. That's what happened. So this is the two reasons. These are the two reasons. That's why before Compton, no other scientist could observe this shift in wavelength of frequency, because either they have taken any electromagnetic wave, any photon which has higher value of wavelength. So they have not considered X-ray. That's why the detection of the wavelength, that means detection of the scattered wavelength or detection of the change in wavelength, was not possible. Or they have taken any element which is not so light like carbon. So in those cases, electrons were bound to the atom. That means the atom itself takes place in the calculation, and delta lambda would be so small that it is hardly detectable. So these are the two reasons that before Compton no one could detect it, and that was the importance of Compton shift, and why Compton has taken that X-ray with carbon element. And you understand, it was so important that within few years Compton got the Nobel Prize for this discovery, for this experiment. So this is our Compton shift. So in nutshell, just go through it again, that whenever any electromagnetic wave interacts with any matter, it can be an electron, it can be a proton, it can be the atom, anything, and the scattered photon has a different frequency or wavelength than the initial photon. This phenomenon is called Compton effect, and we can measure that change in frequency or change in wavelength. How can we measure it? First thing, we need to write down the energy and momentum of the electron and photon before and after the interaction. Then we'll use conservation of energy. We'll write it in this form, so that mc square will be on left side, all the other quantities on right side, so that nu and nu dash can be written in the same place. Then we square it and keep it. Then we'll take the conservation of momentum. Because momentum is a vector, we need the conservation along x and y axis separately. Then we'll rewrite that equations, so that the quantity associated with phi means the angle along which the electron moves, they are on the left side and all the other quantities on right side. The quantity associated with phi, that will be on left side, all the other quantities on right side, so that when we can square these two and add them, we can get rid of this 5. We don't require 5. Like this. Then we'll subtract the equation we get from momentum from the equation we get from energy. And with some simplification like this one, and we'll get this type of equation. From that equation, we will only find out the quantities which are relevant to us, which we require. We require the frequency. So we'll write all the quantities related to frequency on one side and all the other quantities on right side. That is done here. Next, we'll just simplify it to get this formula. So from that formula, we observe that nu and nu dash are not same. That means there is a change in frequency. And from that, we can rewrite it in terms of wavelength also. It's easy to understand from the wavelengths. And we observe that del lambda dash minus lambda is a positive quantity. That means after the scattering, after the interaction, wavelength does increase. Wavelength increases. That means frequency decreases. And this is the amount of change. This is the Compton shift. Now h by m naught c is constant for a particle. For a particular type of particle, h by m naught c is constant because m naught is the rest mass of the particle. Like if we consider electron, then rest mass of electron is 9.1 into 10 minus 31 kg. Therefore, if I put these values, we will get lambda c as 0.02427 angstrom for electron. You need to remember this value so that your numerical calculation will be much easier. And we call that as Compton wavelength. It's a characteristic of any particle. And thus, we say that delta lambda depends on the angle of scattering. When the angle of scattering is 0, that means whatever be the initial direction of approach, after the scattering, photon goes in the same direction, then that is the minimum possible value, which is 0. So delta lambda will be 0. That means there is no Compton shift. That is the only case where there is no Compton shift. When theta is 90 degree, then the change is same as Compton wavelength. And maximum Compton shift we get when angle is 180 degree. And that is twice of Compton wavelength. And we know that why people before Compton could not observe the Compton shift. So this is not their fault actually. This is due to the inaccuracy of the instrument they have used. You cannot expect to measure 6000 and 6000.05 angstrom with the same instrument. But you can expect it to measure 0.1 and 0.15 angstrom with the same instrument. So this is one reason. And another reason, if you can use any heavy element, then instead of a single electron, you are actually involving a whole atom or a number of atoms. In that case, lambda c will be so small that delta lambda is hardly detectable by any type of instrument you use. So to observe Compton shift experimentally, theoretically is always possible, except theta is 0. So experimentally to get Compton effect, you require photon with lower wavelength like X-ray photon, and you require either you need to extract electron from the atom, make it free, and then use the experiment, or take any light element where the electron is not bounded by the atom itself. So this is all about your Compton